Hey guys, welcome to this video. This is Hernan again with you, and on this video I wanted to touch base real quick on how to use IFTTT to increase your podcast listeners. If you're not podcasting, I strongly recommend that you do so. If you're generating any kind of content out there, podcasting is a great way to engage with your audience. It's a great way to get to more people, to reach more people, etc. And it's really easy to set up a podcast right now. I'm not going to dive into how to actually set up the podcast, but because there are a ton of tutorials that you can find online, and they are free. But we have been implementing the IFTTT strategy to increase our podcast authority, our podcast rankings, and also our podcast listeners. So if you're into podcasting, if you want to increase your podcast listeners, pay close attention, because I'm going to show you how to optimize your podcast for SEO and also how to use IFTTT to increase your podcast listener, basically. Now, podcasting is great. Now, there are a couple of problems with podcasting if you're starting out, and believe me, I have started my own podcast, and we have Semantic Mastery podcast as well, and it's kind of hard to keep up with it, and initially, and especially on initial stages, because there's the difficulty to generate an audience. Every day, a ton of podcasts are being launched because, again, it's super easy, and it's a great way to engage with your audience without having to record videos, etc. And then you can use the podcast to transcribe it and make a blog post, etc. So it's a really good tool for you to start using. Now, there is a difficulty to generate an audience, because again, there are many podcasts out there. It's a big competition, and it's also hard work to promote, because you not only need to be out there, recording, editing. If you're making interviews, finding the interviews, scheduling them, there's a bunch. But having the graphics done, the audio quality needs to be spot on. There's a bunch of challenges when it comes to podcasting. Now, the problem is that if you are there editing, recording, doing everything by yourself, or you have somebody in your team doing it, that's fine. But you also need to, will need to, post into social media. So there's pretty much not a lot of automation that a podcast can be achieved with. What I mean is that if you're out there recording, editing, that's a ton of stuff, that's a ton of work, and you also need to add the promotion. So when using IFTTT, you can automate a big chunk of the promotion so that you can focus on just recording, editing, and getting great guests in your podcast, and putting great content out there. You do not need to worry about anything else, because everything else will be automated just the way we like it. So as you can see, you can plug your podcast into your branded IFTTT network. And you can do this basically by using two channels, and I'm going to show you how in a minute. You can use your podcast RSS feed if you're using a solution like Libsyn, for example, or SoundCloud. These will output RSS feeds. And by the RSS feed, I mean that every time you upload a new episode, it will be, the RSS feed will be modified with that new episode. That can trigger your IFTTT syndication network. But also, IFTTT has a native SoundCloud channel, just as YouTube, that every time you upload a new YouTube video, it will get syndicated out. Well, the same can happen with SoundCloud. Every time you upload a new episode into SoundCloud, it gets syndicated out. So you have those two options. So basically, what you're doing is that from your library or your blog, or both, you can syndicate to your profiles. So what do I mean? If you have a blog syndication network, you can also plug your SoundCloud. Okay, or you can also plug your Libsyn RSS feed, so that you are syndicating both your podcast episode and then the post with that podcast episode, because you will be posting that podcast episode into your blog anyways. That will also bring social signals, and most importantly, it will bring traffic and awareness. Because again, guys, we're posting to social networks. That means that each of these websites, they have traffic in and out themselves. We do not need to go out there and promote it. We can, but these can bring traffic in and out itself. And I'm going to show you some examples in a minute. Now, here are some best practices that I want to show you when it comes to podcasting. Let me show you real quick. So first off, it doesn't matter what solution you're using. I love SoundCloud, and I'm going to show you how to do this with SoundCloud, but you want to SEO optimize your podcast. You want to both tag the files, and you want to have a keyword-rich description for your podcast. And this includes, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, etc. That means that if you search for a tutorial out there, there are a bunch of tutorials that will show you how to tag the files, how to have your own metadata on the podcast files that they are usually WAV or MP3. You want you to be, or your company to be, the author, and have all of those data that comes with an audio file. You want to tag them, and there's a bunch of tutorials out there on how to do that. But also you want to have a keyword-rich description of your podcast channel and your podcast profile, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a second. What I like about SoundCloud is that you can use it as a semantic hub. And by semantic hub, I mean that you can interlink to other properties, as I'm going to show you again in a minute. Now, what you can also do, and this is super, super interesting, and nobody else is talking about this, guys, is that you can silo your podcast channel. You can interlink your podcast episodes with, the description of the podcast, and most of the times those will be live links. But also you can add the podcast episodes to playlists, just as we're doing with YouTube, and use those playlists to silo your podcast episode. So let me show you a live example of that. I'm here on the Semantic Mastery podcast. If you're not following us, you can find us on SoundCloud real quick. But as you can see, we have the podcast episodes here, as you can see them. But also, we can make playlists. So if you're on SoundCloud, you can, for example, grab an episode. Let's see that I want to add this one, Christmas Indexer and IFTTT Techniques. I want to add this to a playlist. And I want to add this to the IFTTT playlist. So I'll click Add to Playlist. And as you can see, guys, here I have a playlist. And I can click on the playlist. And I can go through the episodes real quick. And guess what? I can also power up these playlists as well. Okay, because these has all of the podcasts. And these podcast episodes can also rank on Google as well. So you can interlink your episodes and silo the playlist as you would do with YouTube. You can do it with SoundCloud as well. Now you can syndicate both from the blog with the RSS feed or with the RSS feed from SoundCloud itself, okay? Or Libsyn, whatever solution you're using, it should output an RSS feed. And this is, most of the promotion side of things. You can submit your podcast to many services like iTunes, Stitcher Radio, etc. Stitcher Radio is really easy to get in. iTunes is a bit more, it's a bit more picky when it comes to podcasts, and you have to have some graphics designed for iTunes specifically, etc. But it doesn't really matter. As long as you are updating your feed with SoundCloud or Libsyn, whatever, you can have an iTunes account and it will be automatically updated with your latest podcast episode. And then you can use SERP Space Monitor. Again, guys, if you do not have a SERP Space account, go into serpspace.com and you can have 100, I think it's 100 properties monitors for a couple of dollars. Okay, it's not a big deal, and you can have your entire podcast syndication network monitor. Okay, now this is the recipe that has SoundCloud natively, but you can also use the RSS feed into IFTTT. Okay, so if any public track by Semantic Mastery, you can find the SoundCloud channel into IFTTT. Then you can post a tweet, or you can syndicate out, and you can, update your entire network for these podcasts. And then you can also use, as you can see here, you can also use the podcast page as a semantic hub, okay? Because here we have semantic mastery, we have picture, it says we are in the United States, and then you can see we have virtual asset architecture, SEO and semantic web training, and case studies. This is a keyword rich title, okay? And we have a keyword rich description, and then below that, you can add a ton of backlinks to your other social properties. This turns SoundCloud into a great social hub that you and semantic hub that you can, interlink your other social media properties, but also link these social media properties with whatever you're doing on the podcast and also whatever you're doing with, the description, etc. So this is really, really a good way to power up your podcast episodes even more. Again, this is on SoundCloud, and I really like SoundCloud, but you can do this with pretty much every service out there. And again, guys, if you're syndicating out from your blog, do not forget to put the RSS attribution link, because this will say that this podcast episode was first seen on yourdomain.com, and that will prevent you from duplicate issues. Okay. So go ahead, implement the IFTTT strategies for your podcast episode. Here are some networks and traffic that we're getting from the from our IFTTT networks, etc. So as you can see, we have a ton of traffic coming from Google, Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube, Twitter, etc. And here are some results, guys. Here are some results. Here we have 47 listeners, 54, 55. Here we have some more. Okay, we have a bunch of more listeners. Let me show you real quick. We have been growing our podcast. This is the brand new episode we uploaded yesterday, and we have been growing nicely because of the IFTTT SEO strategies, and also from my own podcast, I have 57, 128. So these are all syndicated out to my own branded properties. So as you can see, you can have a ton of results right off the bat. These are 2 brand new episodes, but go ahead, implement it. It can really, really power up your podcast and your podcast promotions. And go ahead, implement it, and let us know how it goes on the Facebook group.